Hi there and welcome to Book-ramble. I'm Mark. I'm reading this and this particular one, Marie de France. And interestingly, although it's about English literature, Marie de France, by the name, was French, but she was writing or was composed in England in an Anglo-Norman dialect. So it's one of the first names that you will come across that is accredited to a woman, rather than, say, being anonymous. And the one that's included here, I'm going to talk about, is Milun, and I assume that's how it's pronounced. It's a delightful lay. It's not very long in itself, and it has a happy ending, which, as I was going through it, I was convinced it wasn't going to be. I'll explain that momentarily. The thing about the Norton Anthology, it has things like Beowulf and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, which in the past I found quite difficult to get into. So what I've read so far is Beowulf, and that was far easier than I thought it would be because of the notes that's in the anthology. And it sets it up really nicely. Either it's to do with the translation, or it just lends itself very well from the original French that is almost like in the same meter as the English. But obviously liberties would have been taken in terms of the translation, and it's Dorothy Gilbert. So give you an example of the language, and it's here in yellow. So in a garden set nearby her chamber, in great jollity of spirit, she kept rendezvous. Oh, frequently they met, these two. He came so much, he loved so well, that she conceived this demoiselle. So it's like that all the way through. And it's a lovely story, very unique as well. It's about Milun, which supposedly is a Welsh name, because in South Wales he was born Milun. From the day he was dubbed, no one he found, no single chevalier could knock him off his destrier, of his horse. So he was a powerful knight, and in that era, for the men, obviously, that was what was considered to be of high standing and status. And that is something that comes back at the end, where he's fighting someone he comes across. There's going to be spoilers. So Milun, as I've just stated, meets a woman who's already betrothed, but he has a dalliance with her, and she has a wee child. Judgment on her would be severe, torture by sword, or she might be sold into foreign slavery. So the benefit of reading something like this, it really sets very powerfully the standing that women of noble birth had. That they were there to be married off to somebody, mainly for alliance, and it was rare that people could marry for love. And again, I'll talk about that shortly. So what does she do? The ancients had such customs then, and in that time such things were done. Milun responded that he would do what her council said he should. Take this child, said she, at its birth. My unmarried sister lies up north. If in writing you display a letter that she gave him, if in words you speak and say it, this is your sister's child you bring, a cause of her great suffering, it will be nurtured well, she'll see, boy, girl, whichever one it be. So she has to give the child away. She also had to keep the pregnancy secret. So there's this lovely little bit where she has to go off and secretly be cared for during her containment, as it was called, or confinement, and then she has the child. Then an old woman cared for her, with whom she trusted all she did. This dame concealed all she hid, never gave hint of the affair by word, by manner, or by air. And then, therefore, the child, as it turns out to be a boy, is given away. What's unique about this story, and I can't remember if I've come across something similar before, the Milun and the lady love each other, but they can't ever be seen in public. So what they do is that they send each other letters. Well, how do you get a letter into a castle where the lady is being closeted and kept away from people just before she's given away? After marriage, can't be approached. So what happens is that Milun gets a swan, and hides letters in the fold of the wings, gives it to someone to give her as a present. She then reads the letter, and how do you then get it back? Well, the swan naturally will go back to where it was reared, according to the story. She has to half-starve the bird so that when she puts the letter under the feathers of the swan and the swan goes off, because it's hungry, it's going to get there quicker. And that's what happens. There's back and forth with swans. A letter he composed, Milun, and sealed. He had a much-loved swan. He placed the letter round its throat, and in its feathers hid the note. So it was nothing to do with the wing. It was hidden round the throat. And you get, because it's a woman writing about a woman and what she has to put up with being confined, wonderful little bit here that when she says to herself, "Why live? To die is best for me, but I am not the least bit free. All around me are guardians, young ones and old, my chamberlains who loathe love with great enmity always, and who love misery." Beautiful. So you get this juxtaposition of a woman who would want to be with a man, surrounded by men who keep her enthralled, and they're not nice people. So she very much is the lady in the tower. The loved one, the man, Milun, can't get to her. And the tragedy of this story is that I suppose it's a bit like Captain Corelli's mandolin. If you know that story where in the war, the Italian with the mandolin, Captain Corelli, falls in love with a local girl on the island. But after the war, it's a mess. And she thinks he disappears. But many, many years later, almost 30, 40 years later, he comes to the island and finds that she's there. And he had seen her back just after the war, but thought she was with child, or had a child because she was with a young child. I can't remember if it was a baby in arms, that she was looking after someone's other baby. Anyway, it's so maddening that they could have just easily have met and had a nice life together, but they had to be separated. And that happens here in the story. 20 years in which Milun pines for his loved one who's married and can't get anywhere near her. 20 years these two lived this way. The knight Milun and his amie, always the swan their emissary, no other intermediary. So this swan will long live, no doubt. It's probably other swans or whatever, but it was dutiful, this swan going back and forth. So what happened to the baby? The baby is up north, Northumberland I think it is, and grows up to be such a fine man, young man. He said, and the lady who had nursed their son devoted such attention, he grew of age under her care, and then she dubbed him Chevalier. He was a fine young handsome man. Letter and ring she gave him then, explained to him who was his mother, and told the fortunes of his father. But this is an era in which knights were going around from tournament to tournament. So if you think about A Knight's Tale, the film, the comedic film, where Geoffrey Chaucer is in it. So over in France at Barfleur, I think the modern version may be Barfleur, a port, the son goes straight away, and so he came to Brittany and tournayed there, and he became renowned as a fighter. No one could beat him. But then Milun hears about this, who himself is a great fighter, and seeks him out, not knowing who this child is, or this young man, and they fight. It's at this point I thought, so he doesn't know it's the son is going to kill him, or the son will kill the father, and then they'll find out when it's too late what they've done. That doesn't happen. And there's a little bit here talking about Milun, who wants to go over to France because he hears of the fame of this new knight. It doesn't quite rhyme, though, in the modern English. Bear in mind, it's not modern English in which it was written, so the translation doesn't always rhyme where you think it would be. So praise of this fine knight reached to Milun, While he himself set forth on journeys, bore arms, engaged himself in tourneys, none in the country of his birth must prized or praised be for his worth. A plan he then resolved upon, he'd cross the sea, make haste, be gone, and with this chevalier he'd joust, injure him, harm him, do his woust, or worst. So it doesn't quite rhyme, but obviously there's a reason for that. It doesn't detract from the flow of the words and the story. So these two men meet, and it seems to be that this bittersweet, lovely tale of love and unrequited love, and these, for 20 years, these lovers have been had to never be seen together. And they meet on the tourney, the son and the father. The young man unhorses Milun. Thou hast, thou jousting, unhorsed me, wonderfully could I love thee. And when he spoke thus, Milun, for sure, could not sit still and listen more. Quickly he leapt up, seized the skirt of the youth's hauberk, his mailed shirt. My God, he said, healed is Milun. By my faith, friend, you are my son. I've searched for thee, I've sought for thee. This year my country left for thee. And they have this wonderful reunion. And you think, okay, nice, what's going to happen now? And the son said, by my faith, dear father, I shall bring you and her together. This lord of hers I will dispatch and see you married, made a match. So both men go back to England with the exact intent of killing the lord, the one who's keeping the son's mother enthralled and Milun's lover. But you're looking at it and you think, hang on, this is about to end. Obviously, this is going to be a quick dispatch at the end of quite a nice flow of words. But it doesn't happen, because as they touch the shores of England, there is somebody waiting there, strangely, waiting for their arrival with a letter, who tells them that now, unfortunately, due to death, the lady is now free. Her husband is dead. And therefore, they're going to get together and have a happy life, a happy ever after. Of their good fortune and their love, the ancients made the lay above. And I, who wrote the story down, delighted much to tell this one. And that's the end of the story. Milun. It's part of that oeuvre, the romantic tales, which, funnily enough, Cervantes almost chortles at and pokes fun with those types of stories. That there is these knights going out and they're tourneying and they're unhorsing each other and they're winning acclaim and fame, no doubt money. But in the background, the women, where are they? But at the end, the woman is actually, by sheer chance of nature, suddenly free after 20 years, and then they're going to spend the rest of their life together, and the father found the son, and blah, blah, blah. It's a nicely written story. The uniqueness of it is, I think, the swan, for myself. That device of passing through letters, genius. And the writing of catching them and putting them with the letters round the throat, not under the wing, as I said, and then sending them off to the castle. That's a lovely thing. I can imagine that being filmed, if it's not been filmed before. But then it's a standard tale of where you're going to take these characters and how's it going to end. I would imagine very powerful in the original language. Just a nice little story. And I can see why it's included in the Norton Anthology. So, just a quick one. I enjoyed it. There is another one which I'll read, L'Enval, which is also by Marie de France. So, until later. Ta-ta for now.